Before we get into the video today, I just want to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors, Gnostic TV. Gnostic TV is ancient wisdom reimagined. This is a Netflix for those who are spiritually curious and want a place to go where there is no censorship. I personally am doing a whole series on Gnostic TV called The Esoteric Explorer, where I am providing exclusive content to Gnostic. Gnostic TV is a host to all sorts of different content creators, many of whom are your old favorites. If you would like to check out Gnostic TV, there is a link down in the description box below. All right, you guys, since we are in Mercury retrograde and we're at this particular time in our timeline, as I spoke about on Monday's video, if you didn't see that video, I'm just going to get this dragon's blood around here. I asked that Archangel Michael and that any of my guides who are here for my highest good be in here. I do not consent to any nefarious beings, human or otherwise, to be in my system, to be messing with the audio or the footage. You don't have permission to be here. I don't consent. I revoke any permission you think you have by using my shadow work as an entry point into my system, into my work. You can't be here. And I ask that any of my beings of light, my protectors, my guardian angels, my spirit guides, remove any nefarious beings, human or otherwise, that are in the system that wish to destroy this work. All right. Put this down here. So if you see smoke coming up, it's from this. All right, you guys. So we're going to talk about Wicked, the movie Wicked, because I saw it yesterday. I finally got to see it. And as I mentioned in a previous video, I am a huge musical theater fan. I'm a huge musical theater nerd. When I lived in London, I was constantly going to the West End and just getting last minute tickets and seeing shows. I grew up, my parents always made sure we were constantly in the theater watching plays, understanding the theater. That wind blowing is my air purifier. It's not a spirit. My air purifier. So it's acting up now because I lit the incense. But anyway, you guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about my reaction to the movie adaptation of the play Wicked. I know that's going to be controversial because there are a lot of people in our community who see things in very black and white, vigilante nonsense. And if you've been following me for a long time, you know that I think that is absolute nonsense. And not only is that vigilante black and white thinking nonsense, but it's also very scary thinking. Just because you're aware of the truth of what's going on in our world doesn't necessarily mean you're a good person, right? Being aware of the truth doesn't make you good. Your actions, your compassion, your understanding, your choices, that's what make you good. So, which is kind of a great opening to the story of Wicked, because Wicked is definitely not, as I said in my other video, a lot of people I've been watching on TikTok, a lot of people who haven't seen the play or read the book are bringing their children to this movie thinking it's like a kid's movie. It's not. It's not a kid's movie. And I don't actually think The Wizard of Oz is a kid's movie, even though we all watched it as kids. There's some really heavy topics, heavy themes, complex thought in this story that I don't know if children are absolutely ready to understand, you know? And even though Wicked is very big, it's very campy, it's very colorful, there's lots of singing and great dancing, the story itself, again, is not for children. And that's kind of what makes Wicked such successful, in my opinion. It has been such a successful play on Broadway for God over 2 decades now, is because of all of these things. It's got the power of costume, beautiful, elaborate, big, campy, colorful costumes. It's got the power of incredible music. It's got the power of incredible dancing. And it's also got the power of a very complicated, very deep, emotional story. Now I'm going to kind of go through something about the story and how it pertains to our world. Believe it or not, it pertains to a lot of what we have gone through in our world today. But there's also some other things that my boyfriend brought up that I didn't even really consider. I already considered, like, oh my God, when all of this started in like 2015 with, the elevator, we'll say. I'm trying to keep this on YouTube, by the way, so we're going to watch our words. With the elevator, yeah, I already kind of figured, like, there's already a lot of that happening in Wicked too, with like propaganda and all that kind of stuff. But there's also some other things that my boyfriend picked up on that I never considered, and I'll tell you why I didn't consider when we get to that point in this outline. Now, I'm going to try not to give too many spoilers. I am going off of the assumption that most people have already seen the play. Most people are already familiar with the story, but I will let you know if I'm about to give a spoiler in case you haven't seen it. But for now, let's just kind of go over the basis of Act 1. Now, I didn't know, if you follow me on TikTok, I didn't know that they divided it into Part 1 and Part 2, or Act 1 and Act 2. And I was actually I thought it was going to be interesting to see how they were going to get the full story into a 2-hour, 41-minute movie, right? 3-hour movie. Because Broadway plays are much longer than that. I didn't know that they had actually divided it, and that Act 2 is going to be coming out next year around this time, which was brilliant for them to do. Because, yeah, it would have been a really long movie for people to sit through. In the theater, you have intermission. In the theater, it's more interactive with the audience we'll talk about that, because of the live music. So it's a very different experience than being in a movie theater, a play theater versus a playhouse versus a movie theater. Now, with the start of this, let's just kind of go through briefly Act 1. This is not any spoilers. Stuff that might sound like spoilers really aren't. The movies, or the story of Wicked starts off at the end of The Wizard of Oz. So that's where it starts. So the Wicked Witch of the West has just had water thrown on her by Dorothy. And so it starts off with this announcement all over Oz that the Wicked Witch of the West she's gone. And you see this celebration throughout Oz. And then all of a sudden you see Glinda, the good, coming down on her bubble to talk to the people of Oz, to reassure them that she's gone, there's nothing to fear anymore. And so she comes down on her bubble, and all the Ozians run out. And is it true, Glinda? And yes, it's true. She is gone. I can't say the D word on YouTube, but she's no more. And so they go through these questions where she's kind of doing like a political speech almost, right? Like she's at a rally, we'll say, and she's saying, yes, 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 it's okay, it's all good, you're fine now. And this little girl asks a question like, well, what made her wicked? So this is where the basis, kind of the underlying crux of the story lies, is what is wicked? And she kind of answers, the line is something like, are people born wicked, or is wicked thrust upon them? After all, she had a mother, as most people do. And Glinda does have funny lines like that, because Glinda's a little ditzy sometimes, but there's more complexity to Glinda. And it kind of gets into this theory of nature versus nurture. Like, how do people become evil? How do people become wicked? Are they born that way? Or does life turn them into that? And for me, and I think for a lot of you, I think it's both. I think they're both cases. We know from the law of one that a person with a soul is the only person who can really do evil, because they're making the choice to do evil. Yeah. So she kind of opens with that. She talks about how Elphaba, which is the Wicked Witch of the West, was conceived. And this isn't giving too much away, you guys. This is right in the opening scene. So Elphaba's mother was the wife of the governor of Munchkinland. So very powerful political family, and he would travel a lot. And whenever he would travel, Elphaba's mother liked to have fun. She had play dates, we'll say, because I have to be careful on YouTube how I say this. And one of the people that it's implied, because you see his shadow, so it's not giving much away. If you didn't pick up on this, then that's your lack of observation skills. One of the people that she has a play date with is the Wizard of Oz, is the wonderful wizard. And he does something kind of sneaky. So he gives her mother this elixir that's green that she drinks when they're in their play date. And so she conceives a child, and she has this little baby girl who's green. That's the Wicked Witch of the West, her green skin. Now, the father, or the guy who raises her, the governor of Munchkinland, I think he kind of knows that's not his daughter, but it's never really specified by him. She calls him father. He treats her as his daughter, although he does not treat her very well at all. He's very mean to her because she doesn't look right, you know? And so you kind of see the beginnings of her life where she's made fun of. She goes through a lot of bullying because she's got green skin. She's kind of more raised by her nanny than her parents. And then she has this little sister named Nessa. And it gets into, she feels very responsible for Nessa. And Nessa is from the Wizard of Oz, the one that the house falls on with the shoes. And you see the shoes in the very beginning. Now, FYI, for those who don't know, in the original book of The Wizard of Oz that was written in like 1900, the shoes were not ruby red, they were silver. And so Wicked does go back to the original shoe color, which is silver. So you do see the shoes from the very beginning that are Nessa's shoes. They belong to their mother. Their mother does, Elphaba, Nessa's mother does pass at Nessa's birth. So they don't have their mother. They're kind of raised by their father and this nanny. And Elphaba spends her whole life being she's got a lot of PTSD. She's been made fun of a lot. She's been bullied a lot. And she also feels very responsible. Her sister Nessa is in a wheelchair. She's born handicapped. And Elphaba feels responsible for this. I'm not going to say why. You have to watch the play to see why she feels responsible for her sister not having the use of her legs. So in the beginning scene, Glenda's kind of explaining all of this, like her early life, you know, and this question is, are people born wicked or do they become wicked? And she's saying, you know, she had a childhood, blah, blah, blah. And she goes to leave again. And someone says, hey, I heard a rumor that you and Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, were actually friends. And this catches Glenda off guard. And she's like, well, yes, we were. We went to school together. Now, in this time, this kind of sets off the story of Wicked. Now, at this point, the opening number, as I said on TikTok, so the opening number of the play, as a lot of Broadway plays do, musicals, it opens with like a bang. The music is very dun, 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 like very, you know, as they open the curtains raise and the orchestra's going, because it's starting at this point where Dorothy has thrown water on this evil person that's been just the problem for all of Oz, right? And they've got the flying monkeys that come out, and so it kind of hits you as the audience. And in musical theater, in an actual live performance, it's all live. You know, the music's live, the orchestra's live. There's an orchestra pit. The animation, you know, they don't have any CGI in the theater. It's all set design and ropes and costuming, and so the minute the play starts, I always get chill bumps because the way a theater is designed, it's like an amphitheater. So the music carries into the audience. And for those who don't know, the audience in a theater, the audience is the fourth wall. In film, the screen is the fourth wall. And depending on the playhouse, sometimes that fourth wall in the theater could be a little bit more 3D, depending on how the theater is developed. So in some performances of Wicked, they can actually get the flying monkeys to come out over the audience on ropes in the beginning. So it involves the audience in this story of this celebration of all over Oz, of the melting of Elphaba. You know, and like a good example is this. I know when Newsies opened up in the West End just recently, they created the theater where they did the Newsies. They created the audience as being different boroughs of New York. So the audience involvement in the story was more so than in a lot of theaters because of the way the theater was set up. So depending on the theater you see Wicked, that opening number is really powerful, and you're immediately, your goosebumps are going, okay? And so then the bubble comes down, she's telling the story that I just told you guys. Well, then they sing this song, No One Mourns the Wicked, right? So this is happening where there's this huge celebration. You see them pulling down signs of this like witch's face, that's a wanted sign. They have a Burning Man where they light a pyre of Elphaba. They, you know, it's this whole celebration, you know, that this evil person is now no more. And Glinda's kind of caught in this. Now, what's interesting, and my boyfriend was with me, and he doesn't know, we're going to get more, he doesn't know the story of Wicked. He's not a theater person. And after Act 1, obviously it leaves you with a lot of questions. And he was like, so if Elphaba is not actually wicked, she's not the evil one, but yet Glinda's her friend, but yet she was singing with them, like, I'm confused. And I said to my boyfriend, I was like, did you see her face? Now, this was interesting again, because in the theater, unless you're sitting right up on the orchestra pit, you're not totally going to be able to see with clarity the facial. It's bigger in the theater, but on film, because of where the subtle movement of their face, a lot of the story, one look is worth 1,000 words, right? And so when they're doing the No One Mourns the Wicked, the way Ariana Grande, who did a fabulous job, by the way, I really, she did fantastic. The way she played that song, the way she created her face to look as she was singing, goodness knows the wicked's life are lonely, goodness knows the wicked die alone. You can tell when she's singing that song, she's singing about herself. And I already knew that because, and that's not a spoiler, you're going to figure that out kind of by seeing that the title of Wicked is not about Elphaba. Elphaba is not the title. Who is the wicked one? Is it Glinda? Kind of, but not really. We're going to get more into that. She thinks that she's wicked. She carries that weight on her shoulders because of what happens in the story. Or is Wicked about the Wizard of Oz, the wizard? Or is this just a subliminal text showing propaganda? But in the first act, the way Ariana Grande played that with the camera in her face was brilliant. She did a brilliant job, because if you didn't know what you were looking for, you wouldn't read that on her face. But if you knew what you were looking for, you saw her play that where the crowd thinks she's singing about Elphaba when she's really singing about herself. So nonetheless, this is where it all starts. And so when she's explaining to the crowd how her and Elphaba were friends at one point, that's where we now skip back to before Dorothy ever came to Oz. So we go back in time. So now we're starting with, we've heard the story of Elphaba's birth, of her childhood. We don't know much about Glinda's childhood. We just see glimpses of Glinda with her parents. We're going to talk about that with, actually, this is a good kind of place to kind of talk about their characters and just the art of it all. So Galinda, as she is in the beginning of I'll just call her Glinda because that's what everybody knows her as, but Galinda, as she's called as a child, you can tell she's comes from a very rich family. She's very spoiled. She always gets her way. She is beautiful. She carries herself very beautifully. And in contrast, Elphaba comes from also a powerful family, but politically powerful. Whereas Glinda has the money, Elphaba has the political power. Now, they do become roommates at Shiz University, which is, they're there to study, they're both studying sorcery. Now, this gets into also the mirroring each other. So from the very beginning, you see Glinda, and as I said in my prior video, if I was an actress, the character that I absolutely would want to play would be Glinda. Elphaba is a very deep, intimate character, but there's way more complexity to Glinda. There's way more, because we see this character at the beginning, and it gets into this wielding of power, right? So this isn't really a spoiler. you'll learn this from pretty much from the start of the movie. Glinda doesn't have any magical powers, right? She's not a witch. She doesn't know how to like make things appear. However, Elphaba does. Elphaba has a lot of powers that she really can't control. Like every time she gets emotional, something happens, right? Glinda wants to be a sorceress, but she doesn't have those powers. Now, the thing about Glinda, though, is that she does have a power. It's not in sorcery, but it's in her confidence. You can tell by the snippets you see of Glinda at Shiz University, and we don't have much information about her early childhood, but she's this person who's really probably never had any trauma, or not a person. We'll get to that because they're not in the earth realm, right? She's never had any trauma. She's always gotten her way. She's very pretty. And so she exudes this confidence. This is not an act for her. The character of Glinda just is confident. She walks around life with her head held high. Ariana Grande carried Glinda it's very natural, the way she kind of stands and kind of commands a room. She's used her beauty, because she is physically beautiful, her beauty, to maneuver her way through life to get what she wants. That's her power, is her confidence and her beauty. That's where she has power. So she's been able to kind of skim through life doing the bare minimum and always ending up at the place she wants to end up, because she's got this magnetism, this charm, right? And this magnetism and this charm does come across as vapid, as ditzy, but she's anything but, which you're going to see as the story progresses. Now, Elphaba, on the other hand, where Glinda has all this confidence and this beauty and this power in the way she is, she wants to be a sorceress, but she doesn't have the ability to do witchcraft. It's not in her to do witchcraft. She doesn't have that gene, right? Whereas Elphaba is kind of the ugly duckling. She's green. She's been made fun of her whole life, but she has the power of sorcery. And the confidence that Elphaba has is fake. And you can tell that she's faking her confidence. You see the way Cynthia Erivo played her, the way she would kind of have to force herself to hold her head up high. You can tell that this is a girl, Elphaba, who has had a lot of trauma. So both of these two women mirror each other. Elphaba has what Glinda wants, and Glinda has what Elphaba wants. Even though Elphaba pretends that it doesn't bother her, that her skin is green and she's not the attractive girl, even though she pretends, she really wants to be the attractive, pretty girl. So this is a dichotomy of these two women who each have what the other wants. And at first, they're not friends. The big number you see on TikTok, Loathing, where they're doing the dance with the books, where she's hitting the books, huge number about them like loathing each other. They end up having to be roommates. It's a miscommunication. They weren't supposed to be roommates. Elphaba's supposed to be looking after Nessa, her sister, who's also enrolled at Shiz, but she ends up being roommates with Glinda. And so there's this huge friction between the two, right? Jealousy between the two of each other. Their friendship comes about because there's this guy named Bach, who's part of the Munchkin Land, who has a crush on Glinda. We have the entrance of Fiyero, who is a prince in the realm of Oz, and he's been kicked out of all these different schools. He's kind of the bad boy. By the way, the guy who played Fiyero, he was amazing. I think he's in Bridgerton. Fiyero, the two leads are the two women. So all the big male parts are supporting characters like Bach. I'm going to talk about Fiyero, the wizard. These are all male supporting characters, but Fiyero and Bach are two of the men that have two of the biggest roles in the story as far as the male leads. And Fiyero, the guy, I heard it in an interview, because Fiyero does this whole like dancing through life scene where he dances a lot. And the guy playing Fiyero, as they all did their own stunt work. They all did their own dancing. They all sang live. Unbelievable. They were brilliant. His footwork, I heard it described in an interview that he's kind of like Gene Kelly, a Fred Astaire, like the way he moves. And I was very impressed. Jonathan Bailey, is that his name? The actor who plays Fiyero, very good looking, very much plays that kind of stud muffin. He himself is also comes in hot, very vapid as well. So Glinda and him kind of have this like mutual attraction to each other because they're perfect together, because they're both vapid, they're both attractive, they're both kind of the same person, but in male and female form. And so they naturally kind of come together. Well, there's this club called the Ozdus, like it's like a club that the kids want to go to now. And at Shiz University, they're not allowed to leave at night, so they sneak off to go to this Ozdus. Well, Bach has had this Munchkin has had this like crush on Glinda since the first day of school. And so he goes to invite Glinda to the Ozdus with him, but she wants to go with Fiyero. And so she kind of manipulates. And there's that whole, you see that tragically beautiful girl, the one in the chair, talking about Nessa, Elphaba's sister, the one that the house eventually falls on. And she goes, it seems so unfair that we should go on a spree and not she. Gee, I know someone would be my hero if he would go and ask her. And he goes, well, Bach goes, well, maybe I can go ask her. And she goes, oh, really, Bach, you do that for me? And he goes, I would do anything for you, Miss Glinda. And so she puts Bach off on Nessa so that she can go be with Fiyero. So this is all a big tactic of charm and manipulation. Again, that is Glinda's power. Her power is her charm and her manipulation. And I was thinking about it, is that really so bad? We see people in the world who have like the power of being linguists, right? Or they're very smart and good at debate, and they wield that power and they can manipulate a political debate. Is that any different than someone whose power is in their beauty and they're able to wield that power to move through life? Can we judge Glinda for that? No, because we all have something that we're good at. We all have efficiencies and deficiencies within our energetic being. And she knows how to use her looks. She knows how to use her charm to get people to do what she wants them to do, which is really important to remember for Act 2. That this is her power. Her power is not sorcery. Her power is in her charm. It's going to play into Act 2 in a very powerful way. All right. So back to the Ozdus. So this kind of kicks off Elphaba and Glinda becoming friends, because Nessa goes to Elphaba, her sister, and says, oh my God, Glinda set me up with this boy. I'm so happy. And so Elphaba goes to thank Glinda. Glinda gives her the big black pointy hat as a joke, the witch's hat, because it's so ugly. She's making fun of her. And then Elphaba thinks she's being sincere, and so she tells the headmistress, the source, to work with Glinda too, because she knows Glinda wants to be a sorceress, to say thank you to Glinda for doing this. And anyway, Elphaba comes to the Ozdus. She's wearing her hat. She gets totally made fun of. And all of a sudden you see a shift in Glinda's character. You see some more depth come out, because all of a sudden Glinda feels guilty. I cried watching this in the movie theater. Watching the scene on the stage, I never, it's a shame, it's sad, but it's faster. But watching this scene in the movie theater, where their cameras are on their faces and they slowed the scene down, made me so emotional. I was like weeping. I was so emotional because you see Glinda, Elpha's doing these weird dances because she's trying to act confident. And Fiyero says to Glinda, God, she really doesn't care what people think, does she? And Glinda is looking at Elphaba and goes, no, she actually absolutely cares what people think. She just pretends not to. And so because Glinda feels so bad, she goes to Elphaba and she starts doing the weird dance with her. And her friends pull her aside and they're like, Glinda, what are you doing? You can't do this. This is social. You're going to, I'm about to say the S word that YouTube doesn't like. You're going to be the social outcast. And they're like, stop, Glinda, stop. And she's like, no, I'm not going to stop. And so she goes back to Elphaba and everybody's like watching and they're doing this weird dance. And you start to see Elphaba cry, which got me. Now, I've seen so many people going, why did this is a mistake from the filmmakers, because obviously Elphaba melted with the water. So how could she melt with water but then cry? And I'm sitting here thinking, it's not a mistake, y'all. Have you not figured it out yet? Have you not figured it out yet? We're going to get to it. Is she allergic to water? Obviously, they're showing you by her crying, they're giving you some foreshadowing. She's not allergic to water. That gives you some foreshadowing. Anyway, so they become friends. All of a sudden, because Glinda's out there doing it with Elphaba, everybody at the party all of a sudden starts to cheer for Elphaba. Elphaba all of a sudden becomes popular because Glinda's made her popular. Now, at this point in the movie, my boyfriend had to go pee, and I was like, oh my God, you have to go pee fast because the best scene is coming, and that's the popular scene. Now, I will say, Ariana Grande did a fabulous job doing this scene on camera. However, the popular scene, you guys have all heard the song, Popular, you're gonna be, it's a song that they play on TikTok a lot. And I've said this before, all the big numbers that these girls have, the real juicy numbers are all Elphaba's, like The Wizard and I, Defying Gravity, this big, just belting numbers. And when you hear the recording of Glinda's numbers, they're not as like belty as Elphaba's, but on stage, they're the best numbers. So the popular scene on stage, and you can go and Google it. There's some recordings of women doing this on stage, belly laughing. You will be belly laughing at this. And that's the thing about the character of Glinda, is that she's the comedic role. She doesn't mean to be. That's what makes her so funny, is that she doesn't mean to be funny. She just is funny. Just the way she exudes her confidence and her charm and her vapidness. And she's not vapid, though. She's very smart, but she plays this, that's part of her, we'll say her manipulation. She does this thing with her hair all the time. You know, she's playing with herself. And it's such a part of her physicality as a character, that the popular number on the stage is literally, I mean, belly laughing funny. And again, Ariana did a great job doing this on film as well, but it just didn't have the power on film as it does on the stage. And this is where Glinda decides that she's going to make Elphaba popular. She's going to give her a makeover. Now, there was a change in the script that was fantastic. She's like, you know, talking about how popularity is really how you wield power, which is Glinda's power. Again, that goes back to her gift, if we want to call it that. Whereas Elphaba's gift is the gift of sorcery, Glinda's gift is the gift of popularity. Yeah. And we're all given these gifts, right? They're just tools. How we use the tools is what defines whether it's good or bad. How Elphaba uses her magic is what's defined as wicked or good. How Glinda uses her beauty, her popularity, is what is determined whether it's good or bad. Yeah. So we're seeing her, and she's like, think of heads of state, especially great communicators. Did they have brains or knowledge? Now, in the play version, she goes, "Don't make me laugh. They were popular. Please." It's all about popularity. But in the movie version, oh, this was just great. She goes, "Did they have brains or knowledge?" And she's pointing to all these like leaders, and Elphaba's kind of pointing, and she goes, and Glinda goes, "They were." And Elphaba goes, "Popular," and she takes the book and she goes, "Right." And just the way that Ariana Grande did that, right. I did bust out laughing at that point because she played that perfectly, so passionately, like she was so excited that Elphaba finally got it. It wasn't because they were smart, it was because they were popular, you know. And so thus starts this friendship where the two girls become extremely close because it's like the yin and the yang. Together, they become a powerhouse. Elphaba needs Glinda, and likewise, Glinda needs Elphaba. They need each other in order to complete their dharma. So at this same time, and again, this isn't giving too much away, in the land of Oz, the animals are like people. They speak, they have communication, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they have jobs. There's a goat professor. which plays differently on film again, because on the stage, obviously these characters are played by humans in costume, but in the movie it's CGI, the animals, so it looks very different compared to how you see it played on the stage. And there's this huge like propaganda. There's this, at this point in the story, the enemies of Oz are the animals. There's this huge, almost like World War II, we'll say Yahtzees going on, where they're pointing the finger, this propaganda about how the animals are the problem, and the animals should be caged, and the animals are starting to lose their ability to speak. They're, you see the goat professor have this dialogue and then start buying. And now I left out at the beginning intentionally, the nanny that raises Elphaba is actually a bear. And so Elphaba has a really soft spot in her heart for these animals, which would be considered in our world a minority group. And so she sees her professor get arrested. She sees all this stuff happen where the animals are being taken in, we'll say. Again, a la World War II. I can't say too much on YouTube. You guys know what I'm referring to. Very similar. And in this one scene, now again, Elphaba has these powers that she's an incredibly strong sorceress, but she can't control her powers. Sometimes when she gets angry or emotional, that's when they come out. And the teacher loved poppies, they're like tulips, but the poppies that are in the Wizard of Oz, they have that as well, and he has it on his desk. And when he's arrested, she gets upset. There's another cub that's brought in a cage to show the students that this is how we're going to treat animals. It's for the betterment of all of Oz that we put all these animals in a cage. And she gets so upset that the poppies kind of explode around the room. And what happens, think about the Wizard of Oz, when they go through the poppy fields, they all fall asleep, except Elphaba and Fiyero, the prince. Now, at this point, again, the prince he's just as vapid as Glinda is, but the three of them are friends because Glinda and Fiyero are like boyfriend and girlfriend, and Elphaba is Glinda's best friend. So the three of them are hanging out together a lot. And as they all fall asleep, Elphaba and Fiyero are looking around the room because they're the only two that didn't work on. The poppies didn't work on. And Fiyero is very confused. Again, because this kid is like Glinda, he has the whole song dancing through life. He's just here to have a good time. He's not going to try too hard. He's a prince. He doesn't need to. So he's super confused and he kind of looks at Elphaba and they're like, grab the cups. They grab the cub out of the cage to go help the cub escape and get the cub to safety. And there's a scene where they're out in the forest while the cub is drinking, where he says, "Why did you keep me awake? Out of all the people in there that fell asleep, why did you, Elphaba, keep me awake?" And she just kind of looks at him and says, "Oh, you're bleeding." She changes the subject. Because the thing is she didn't keep him awake. She can't control her powers. She still has a hard time controlling them. She's not in that much authority over what she can do. So she knows she didn't keep him awake. There was something about him that's like her. There's something in Fiyero, some magic inside of him that he has yet to tap into or even try to tap into, because the poppy seed didn't affect him. And my boyfriend did reach over to me at that moment, because my boyfriend's also RH negative, and he goes, "Is this subtext for RH negatives?" And the reason why, and we're going to talk more about that again, RH negatives are not better or worse than any other blood type, but there are certain side effects where RH negatives are immune to some stuff, like hypnotism. There's just certain things that RH negatives, it just won't happen. We have a hard time with hypnotics, which is what a poppy seed is. And I was like, maybe, but there is, and I kept telling him that Fiyero's character is going to be bigger in Act 2. Like, it's going to be bigger in Act 2. He's having his kind of like coming of age. They're all kind of coming of age, this realization. And now he's passionate about something. So he kind of follows Elphaba with the cub, because he's like, WTF, like, why am I awake and everybody's asleep? So he's just kind of along for the ride with Elphaba. But he's having this moment where he's thinking she kept him awake, but you can kind of see the subtext where even though he's thinking she kept him awake, like deep down he knows she didn't, that there's something about him too. And so all of a sudden there's a there's more of a, you see his shift in his character at this point where he's not like the party boy anymore. He's now like having this internal, holy crap, like who am I? Where, and he starts to kind of go more in himself. He becomes like a more pensive character. And he starts to see, when he follows Elphaba out and he sees this cub that was in a cage now drinking the water, he starts to feel that empathy for this animal. He feels what Elphaba's feeling, not because of Elphaba, but because something has awakened inside of him. And so he's seeing life in a very different way. And all of a sudden, this guy who was just going to vapidly charm his way through life, like Glinda, he's woken up now. You can't unring that bell. You can't get the ship back in the horse, right? Like, he understands now that there's a bigger part for him to play in this world. And he also understands that the world is cruel. And just because you're ignoring the cruelties of the world doesn't mean the cruelties don't exist. So he starts to have this like dark night of the soul. And one of the headmistresses writes a letter to the wizard because she sees that Elphaba is really, her powers are getting stronger. She's trying to rescue these animals. And so the wizard sends for Elphaba. So Elphaba goes off. Glinda actually ends up coming with Elphaba. There's a really funny scene at the train station where they're talking about Fiyero and how he's just been doing a lot of thinking lately. That's kind of a problem for Glinda, that she's changed because he's been doing a lot of thinking lately. There's just really funny scenes. My boyfriend actually, it's hard to make my boyfriend laugh. And he laughed a lot out loud at things with Glinda, the things that she said, because it's just, and Ariana Grande just did such an incredible job playing Glinda. So that's how they get into the Emerald City. And she meets the wizard, and we all know about the wizard. You've seen the Wizard of Oz. It's a guy. It's implied that that's her father. She doesn't know that's her father. The audience should know that that's her father. They should have already figured that out from the opening scene, even though they don't explicitly say that. Because of the green elixir, he has the mother drink. He's created, basically, this wizard has tried to create a super soldier, basically, by giving the mother this elixir. Not only did it make the mother, obviously, Elphaba's mother was very powerful sorceress. The wizard, we know, has no power. We learned that in the Wizard of Oz, that he has no power. He's manipulating power. And he creates this elixir to also give the mother that enhances these abilities in the child, but it also turns the child's skin green so that he can spot it, so that he knows where the child is at all times, because he created her for a reason. But what he didn't understand or factor into this is free will. And so they get to the Emerald City. They're going to meet the Oz. These girls have stars in their eyes. They did have a scene with Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel where they had a little cameo. These, of course, were the original two women who originated the roles of Elphaba and Glinda on Broadway many decades ago. So that was kind of cool that they gave them a cameo. And basically, they learn that the whole animal situation, the caging of the animals, is propaganda that's being put out by the wizard and by their mistress. And the wizard wants to use Elphaba's power to collect even more power for himself. And this is where she makes the decision that she's not going to do this. Now, this is where at the end of Act 1, where we have the Defying Gravity song, the real famous song, one of the most famous songs. This is the end of Act 1, where she flies. She quickly learns how to grab the broom. She's not flying. The broom is flying. She's grabbing the broomstick and flying. And this is where we see Glinda and Elphaba part ways. They both make a choice. Elphaba wants Glinda to come with her. Glinda doesn't do that. Now, this leads us into Act 2. I'm trying to think where I want to go with this. Okay, because I want to talk more about Act 2, but I'm going to do that at the end in case there are people who want to sign off, in case you don't want to have anything spoiled for you. So let's go back to, again, this is all a story about, there's so many complexities. Like, we are all of us, men and women, we're all both Elphaba and Glinda. We both have, all of us have this opposing choices to make on how we wield ourselves in the world. Yeah. So Elphaba and Glinda is all of us. Now, again, though, but looking at them as two individual characters, when they work together, they're the most powerful thing in the world. But when they are opposing each other, it's total destruction. So we're going to get to that in Act 2 again. But now let's go back to things that my boyfriend pointed out to me as we were watching this movie. Now, again, the play, obviously, when all this stuff was happening in 2015, it started, and they announced they were going to be turning Wicked into a movie. You know, obviously, anybody who's seen the play knows that this play is also about propaganda. It's also about fake news. It's also about usually the people you call wicked aren't wicked. I mean, look at Mr. T. You know, it's all of this is in this story. And the reason why they label Elphaba as wicked quickly, they get on the intercom when she says no and she runs off or flies off, is because they know that she knows the truth and that she has the power that they don't have. And so they have to quickly start a smear campaign over this girl, scaring people of her so that she can't destroy them. Right? So Elphaba, absolutely, out of all the characters in this play, she's good. She's the only one that is thoroughly good. There's really not a whole lot of complexity and complication in her boundaries. She sets boundaries. She doesn't want to hurt anybody. She does have, you know, she pretends to have confidence. She's not confident, though. She wants to be the pretty girl. That's her weakness. But her ethics, her morals are hardcore. Like, she doesn't budge on her ethics. There's nothing you can do for her or give to her that's going to cause her to sway from her moral compass. So out of all of the characters in this story, she is the only one, the absolute only one who has nothing wicked about her. She's the good guy. Glinda is also the good guy too, which we're going to get to when we talk more about Act 2. Glinda carries a lot of guilt. That's why Glinda thinks she's wicked. The real wickedness, though, is the wizard and the sorceress, the other sorceress, which you already knew that. If you've seen The Wizard of Oz, you already knew that. So we're watching this, and the costuming. So let's talk a little bit about the costuming. So The Wizard of Oz was written, what, in the let me look that up quickly. I think it was written in the 1900. The Wizard of, it was a 1939 film of Oz book. Let's do the book. Okay. So let's see, let me just, Wikipedia should be, yeah, 1900. It was written in 1900, and it was written as a children's novel, which is kind of crazy. So 1900, the movie was made in 1939. When we look in the 1900s, the dress, the way the costumes are done are very much from the 1900s, like the petticoats, the long dresses. Steampunk, is that what it's called? Let me look that up quickly. Steampunk. And I'll show you guys. So let me show you, if you're not familiar with steampunk. I'm going to share this here. So steampunk is a literary and artistic movement that combines Victoria-era history, fashion with modern technology and fascinating fiction. All right, so it's very, even though it was coined in 1987, the outfits, the costuming is very steampunk in Wicked. On the theater too. Now, this is quite brilliant because, again, the original Wizard of Oz was written in the 1900s, so it's paying homage, again, to more of the fashion of, let's see if they actually pull it up here. Like there's the train she gets on. Yeah, so it's very steampunk. If you can see the costumes, because there is a lot of, you know, we're really not on Earth. I mean, we might be, according to my boyfriend, but for most people, I think it's kind of implied that this is another realm of existence. But the costuming is definitely from the 1900s with a steampunk twist because of um, of when the original book was written was was 1900s. Yeah, so women were wearing petticoats, right? This was a Victorian era. Um, anyway, so we know the set was fantastic, by the way. And I know I've watched a lot of background videos, and we know they really like created Oz. A lot of CGI because there has to be, but also not a lot at the same time. So it was incredible the way they put Oz together. It really took you to a very different realm of reality. Very colorful. So a lot of like fluorescent colors. But if you remember, I think that's kind of paying homage to the movie The Wizard of Oz, because remember, before Dorothy goes to Oz, the footage is in black and white. And then when she gets to Oz, it's color. So everything's color for us now, right? So I think they intentionally did like fluorescent colors to kind of pay homage to the movie The Wizard of Oz, and that impact, and even historically speaking, the impact of there actually now being color film that was big for The Wizard of Oz back in 1939, you know. And so I think that's why they really intentionally made the colors very bright and fluorescent. Now, as they're on the train going into the Emerald City, my boyfriend reaches over to me and he goes, Tartaria. That looks like Tartaria. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, yeah, you're kind of right. Now, again, I don't know if the authors of Wicked knew this, who knows, right? Or if the original author of The Wizard of Oz from the 1900s might have been paying homage to Tartaria, because we're not exactly sure when exactly the mud floods happened, but we know that before the creation of the Federal Reserve, which happened in the 1910s, that perhaps people were aware of the mud floods. And so is the land of Oz, is that Tartaria? In Tartaria, we had all these different ways of healing. In Tartaria, you know, magic was just a part of our being as children of God. We have these abilities, right? I mean, that's what Yahshua is doing when he heals people with his hands. It's Reiki. So I kind of looked at him, and in that minute, I'm looking at, I'm seeing the wizard in a very different light. Now, you know, if you've seen The Wizard of Oz, what happened? He came in on a balloon, a hot air balloon. Is that the coming of other beings to destroy us? He created this like basically false religion where everybody worships the wonderful wizard. He uses spiritual manipulation through fake magic, which is all the fake religions of the world. And he turns this very well-functioning land where it's like multiple little territories under one Oz, under one Earth, under one place. And he's starting to take an authoritarian, tyrannical control by making the animals bad. And he says multiple times, it's said in this movie and play, that in order to bring the people together, they need to have a common enemy. We've all known this. And this is one of the things that has actually scared me the most with the quote unquote truther world. What happens when we'll say the bad guys in our world today, what happens when they're all gone? Who's going to be the next enemy? Is it going to be the RH negatives? Who are you going to prosecute next? And that's why years ago I kind of shifted into focusing a lot on shadow work and healing yourself, because if we don't heal ourselves, we're always going to be in a place of destruction where we're pointing the finger at all these other groups to destroy these other groups, because we always need a common enemy. We always need something to blame. So the wizard first targets the animals. Now we know, if you go back and look at The Wizard of Oz, you already know that the Ozians speak with the animals. How do you know this? The Cowardly Lion. So you already know that the animals, as an audience member, subconsciously, you already know that the animals played an important role in society of Oz. And now they're being targeted as a minority group by the wizard so he can wield more power. Now, of course, now that Elphaba has tried to correct this, she's now targeted as the enemy. So again, I ask for the truthers out there, once all the bad guys are gone, are you going to be able just to live in peace? Or are you now so used to, do you have that taste? Do you have that bloodthirsty taste of evil, of the evil within yourself, that once all the bad guys are gone in our world, are you going to find a new group to target? Because again, just knowing the truth is not what makes you good. The Wizard of Oz knew the truth, and he was the one doing evil. Now, at this point, I'm going to get in a little bit into Act 2. So if you want to turn it off, you can turn it off. Otherwise, I'm not going to give everything away, but I will end by saying, before you turn it off, just something to think about. If you have not seen the full play of Wicked or read the book, I'm just going to give you a little Easter egg here. You've already met all the characters. The only character that you haven't met on screen is Dorothy. You've already met the Scarecrow. You've already met the Tin Man. And you've already met the Cowardly Lion. So hopefully that makes you realize that the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion, they're not who you think they are. They're not who you think they are. You've already met them. Now, when we get to Act 2, I'm not going to tell you who they are. I'm not going to tell you what happens. I'm going to leave that. Again, go see the play or go see Act 1 and then wait a year to see Act 2. But let's talk again about Glinda and Elphaba. So Elphaba flies off. She's now got all this propaganda where Glinda stays back. Glinda is now going to be used by the wizard to continue to do the wizard's bidding because Glinda is popular. So she, again, has a power, and there's power in her popularity. She doesn't have magical power, but neither does the wizard. So that's why Glinda has to float around in a bubble because she can't fly like Elphaba can. So Glinda starts to take more of a powerful role in politics. However, there's a complexity to Glinda. Now, I want you guys to think back to the Wizard of Oz. When the house falls on Elphaba's sister Nessa, and Glinda gives Dorothy the shoes and tells her to follow the yellow brick road to Oz, why didn't Glinda just take Dorothy in her bubble and fly her to Oz? Why didn't she tell Dorothy right then and there to click her heels together to go home? Because that's all Dorothy wanted. Remember, Dorothy, I think we think of Judy Garland as being like a young adult. Dorothy, though, the character, she's a little girl. And they say that in the movie that the witch was melted by a young human little girl. So this is a little girl. This is like a 12-year-old little girl. Everything Glinda does in The Wizard of Oz, if you go back and watch The Wizard of Oz, every direction that Glinda the Good gives Dorothy is intentional. Glinda's smarter than she sets herself out to be. There's a reason why she gives Dorothy Nessa's shoes to wear. There's a reason why she sends her down the road to meet the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. If she put her in her little bubble and hovered her over to Emerald City, none of that would have happened. If she told her just to click her heels, let's go back to that, right? She could have just clicked her heels right then and there and gone back to Kansas. But there was something up Glinda's sleeve. Glinda used Dorothy. Now, meanwhile, the relationship between Glinda and Elphaba is strained, but make no mistake, those two women love each other more than any other person in Oz. And even though their relationship becomes strained, the two of them protect each other. You might be thinking that's weird. And again, if you want to sign off because you don't want any spoilers, I totally understand. But I'm going to have you think about something. So again, Glinda sends Dorothy all the way to the Emerald. She makes her walk to the Emerald City. She picks up these friends along the way, these friends. And what happens when Dorothy gets to the Emerald City? The wizard is exposed for being just a man behind a curtain. Glinda knew this. Glinda has known this whole time. She discovered with Elphaba when they were little girls, when they were in Shiz University and they went off to the Emerald City, where they were separated, they discovered that the wizard is no wizard. He's just a puppet master. And all this time, Elphaba has been in hiding, trying to free the animals, while also having this propaganda against her that she's evil and wicked. She's got a death warrant on her, so Glinda is the one who decided to work with the Wizard of Oz. Glinda is the double agent. So Glinda's charm, I told you to remember back to the beginning, her power is in her beauty and her charm. She can sway a nation. She can also create trust with her enemy. And because she plays on her vapidness, she's outsmarting her enemy. So make no mistake about it. Did Dorothy's house coming into Oz was not the doing of Glinda or Elphaba. There was a reason why the house came into Oz. I'm not going to give that away. It wasn't either one of those girls. But Glinda thought quickly. She thought, she was a quick thinker. And she used the situation. There's a reason why the house fell on Elphaba's sister. Remember Bach, her boyfriend in Munchkinland? Her father was the governor of Munchkinland, so they're in Munchkinland. This is years later into their adulthood. There's a reason why. This isn't an accident that this house landed on Nessa. But it wasn't the doing of Glinda or Elphaba. But Glinda saw who it was. She knew who it was. We see this from the Wizard of Oz because she said that's her sister. She knows who this is. This is a woman, Nessa, that she's known, her best friend's sister. She keeps her composure together and she thinks quickly. All this time, she's been trying to figure out a way to take down the Wizard of Oz, to take down the propaganda while also being a part of the propaganda machine, like a double agent. So Glinda is very smart. Now think about, again, so Dorothy is the one that exposes to all of Oz that the wizard is just a man. But who is the puppet master behind behind Dorothy doing it? Glinda. Glinda. Now let's talk about the Elphaba crying in the scene and people being like, oh, the director made a mistake. He must have made a mistake because how could she cry and then be melted by water? Again, it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake. Have you figured it out yet? Elphaba realizes that Glinda can do way more than Elphaba can because of her popularity. There's way more that Glinda's going to be able to accomplish in her life because of her popularity. It turns out that Glinda's power of popularity is more powerful than Elphaba's power of sorcery. So the two girls come up with a plan. You get what I'm saying? She didn't melt, y'all. At the end of Wicked, Elphaba is still very much alive. She's only in hiding. We'll call it witness protection program. She's under the witness protection program, basically. And she's going to work with Glenda, where Glenda's going to be the face of everything. And so Glenda has to play along with the propaganda in order for this to work. Now, the wickedness that she's singing about herself in the beginning is because this whole fiasco really kind of happened because of Glenda, because Glenda didn't originally just go with Elphaba. But what Glenda's not seeing in her guilt is that if she had gone with Elphaba, if they had not separated, they both would have been wanted. So even though Glenda carries that guilt, I think she also carries the guilt of all the horrific things that are being said about her friend. And at this point, Glenda is very much alone publicly. So that's, I'm not going to give anything else away because there's way more complexities with all the other characters. Now, what's interesting with Act 2, what people are speculating, if you go see the play Wicked, Dorothy, again, is spoken about in the beginning because she's just melted the witch. But you don't actually ever see Dorothy. Like you see, they put a screen up where you see a girl throwing water. So it's just a shadow you see. So Dorothy really isn't a main character in Wicked. However, and she's not shown in Act 1 at all. She's just spoken about in the beginning. However, there is speculation that they're actually going to have an actress play Dorothy. There's going to be more of a, they're going to create more of a role of Dorothy in the movie version because there is this young girl, like or late teenage girl, that has been at all the premieres of Act 1, and nobody knows like why she's there because she's not in Act 1 at all. And so people are wondering if she's Dorothy, if she'll, even though she's at all the premieres of Act 1, we're not going to see her until they release Act 2 because she might be the one playing Dorothy. It's a good speculation because at premieres, it's all people, you know who everyone is, whether it's a cast member, a crew member, producer, what, you know who everybody is. But this girl has just been at all these premieres taking pictures on the red carpet, and people are like, who is this chick? And she's young. She's like a teenager. So people, and she's got brown hair. So people are like, oh, maybe for the movie version, they're actually going to have a Dorothy, where in the play, it's just a shadow of her throwing water. So, all right, you guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions down in the comment section below. If you are watching this on YT, please watch your words. Please, please, please watch your words. I know it's so annoying to ask you to do that, but Dusk is the propaganda that we're living under, right? So, so yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on Tartaria. Is this a story of Tartaria? Is this a story? Is this a story of us? I mean, we think about the animals, like you know, in the Bible, in the Garden of Eden, they were chit-chatting to the animals. They were talking to the animals. So I don't know. It's just speculation. I don't know. I will say Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo did an incredible job. Those girls, I don't agree with them politically, but I will not take away from the fact that they were just phenomenal. Phenomenal. People have complained, like a lot of hairdressers have complained about the shade of blonde they made Ariana Grande's hair. And I don't know much about Ariana Grande. I don't really like listen to pop music, so I don't know. She did such a good job though. But I know she's very dark. Her hair, so they had to blonde because Glenda is blonde. And I know they dyed her hair blonde, but I know they also put like extensions in and wigs in. They have to, and they did that for the Barbie movie too, just to make it as big as they need it to be. And a lot of hairdressers are complaining about her hair color, that the blonde of her hair really kind of bled into her skin color. But I think what hairdressers are missing is that this is not a fashion show. This is about a person who's in it, we'll say, for lack of knowing whether this is Tartaria or not, we're talking about a person that lives in a different realm. And if you're a natural blonde, like I am, like most of my family is, you know that as you get older, your hair dulls some. So you have to get like highlights just to keep the blondness kind of crisp. So I thought the blondness of the way the shade they picked for her hair, I thought it was fantastic. No, it's not a blonde that you would see out on the streets today in our realm of reality, but this is a different realm. This is Oz. They have talking animals, for Christ's sake. They have someone with green skin, for Christ's sake. Like, these are not humans in a fashion show. I thought the color blonde they did for her hair was absolutely fantastic. It made her eyes pop. She's got very, very, very dark eyes. And so it made Ariana Grande's eyes kind of pop out a little bit with how the contrast of her hair and her skin and her eyes. People have talked about their hands. There's so many people create conspiracies over nothing. It's what drives me crazy because Ariana Grande's hands look a lot bigger. And Ariana Grande, both these women are like 5'1". They're tiny women. But if you have seen Ariana Grande interviewed, her hands, she has tattoos all over her hands. And so they had to put things over her hands, probably not just makeup, but like actual glove work over her hands to cover her tattoos because her tattoos because her hands are so used. And with makeup, it can smudge. And if you've got this much money in a production and you've got all these shots to take, you want to get the best coverage. Like we know with Cynthia, the only face, I think she had face paint on her face, but everything else was like a wetsuit almost of green. Right. And so that's why their hands look a little bit bigger, guys. There's no conspiracy there. They're not really men. They're 5'1", for Christ's sake, both of them. Right. They're women. They look like women, but their hands are bigger because they both have stuff, prosthetic stuff over their hands. Because Ariana Grande has tattoos all over her. And Cynthia Erivo isn't actually green. So they have to put the wetsuit over their hands. All right, you guys, let me know your thoughts and your opinions, and I will talk to you soon. Oh, we are going to talk about the RH negatives very soon, and Tamara is coming on later this week. All right, you guys, we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.